and thank you for joining us today for one of 3 podcasts about home dialysis. Today, our special guest is Yalonda Moore, who is going to share her experience with home dialysis from a caregiver's perspective. My name is Kim Buettner, and I'm the Associate Director of Patient and Family Engagement with the ESRD National Coordinating Center. We partner with patients, caregivers, healthcare providers, and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, also known as CMS, to create resources to help kidney patients improve their quality of life. There are several treatment choices available when someone's kidneys don't work well enough to maintain health, and a few of those choices include receiving treatment at home. When someone decides to use a home dialysis treatment, a caregiver may or may not be needed to assist with the treatments. Many patients have shared that the role of a caregiver is one of the most valuable. Today we are talking with Yalonda Moore, who lives in Anchorage, Alaska, with her husband of 32 years. They have 7 children, 3 biological, 4 adopted, and 11 grandchildren. Ms. Moore will discuss her role she played in her husband's decision to dialyze at home and the impact his being able to dialyze at home has had on their lives. Welcome, Yalonda. May I address you as Yalonda?
Yes.
Thank you, Yalonda, for joining us today. Who started the discussion about receiving dialysis at home, you or your husband, Gary?
Gary started that discussion.
And what was your role in the decision-making process?
As to whether I'd have the time to help support him in doing his at-home treatment, because in the beginning when Gary first became a patient, he had also had a stroke and he had partial eyesight, so he needed that extra eyes to make sure that he was hooking up correctly and things like that, so that there was somebody else to see the process of what was going on.
What led to choosing peritoneal dialysis? Was it your first choice, or was home hemodialysis also considered?
Well, he really didn't have a choice in the beginning because he became sick all of a sudden. He didn't like having to go to the clinic and be there for 4 hours a day. He didn't like not being able to control things himself and not being able to just move about when he wanted to. So doing the peritoneal, when it was suggested to him, it gave him a chance to be able to have control back over his life, because his main thing is he likes to say that he's not living with dialysis. He's going to make dialysis live with him. So it was something where he could control it versus it controlling him.
As both wife and caregiver, what concerns did you have about doing dialysis at home?
So my biggest scare was whether I was going to do it correctly and making sure that it didn't harm him. And then come to find out it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was, because after the classes and what they teach you, it came nice, easy, and smooth. So at first it seemed like it was overwhelming, but once the classes get to going and you're going over the machines and seeing that the machine pretty much tells you step by step, there's really no way to mess it up. The classes helps you relax and get used to what you're getting ready to have to deal with on an everyday basis. And it left you with a lot of information and who to contact if you had problems. So the classes are a big hand, and I think most people that do peritoneal, depending on their situation, a care partner is really good, because there are sometimes that, there's so much information sometimes to where it's kind of an overload. But as a care partner, it was really easy. Everything they told him, they made sure that I knew exactly what they were talking about, so that if he forgot something or he missed something, I knew exactly which direction to go and what was missed and how to backtrack to see what happened. So the classes were really good. Everyone should be able to take those classes.
Describe the discussion you had with your children when you explained that your husband would be doing dialysis at home.
At the time that my husband got sick, we still had 2 teenage girls at home. It was having to explain to them that he was going to be there the different actions that had to be taken when he was hooking up his machine, such as explaining to them that you have to knock, whenever you come to the room, if you see the door is closed, be sure to knock on it. Don't open it because you don't know if he's hooking up, and explaining to them why that is, because you don't want the air circulation and things flying around when he's opening his line. Making sure that the animals, stayed out of the room, that the animals that we had stayed out of the room, mainly the cat. But otherwise, it was pretty easy. For one of our children, it was really easy. One of our children, I can't say it was that easy, but I think her problem wasn't as much as the machines or the dialysis. She was just having an all-around hard time with the whole thing, because, like I say, her dad got sick all of a sudden. But for the most part, it was just talking to them about the process of what he does, how he does it, and the different things that they had to look for when it came time for him to do his dialysis, such as watching the cords on the floors and not touching the tops of the machine and things like that, and seeing how they felt about it, and and giving them a chance to work it through, and she's showing them how it works. So then that way they also had a hand in the process and got a chance to see exactly what he was doing.
How long has your husband been doing dialysis at home now?
He is going on his 7th year.
How involved are you with your husband's home dialysis regimen? In other words, what type of assistance or support do you now provide?
Now, within the past 3 years, it's gotten less. When he first started, whenever he had to have heparin injected into his bags, I took care of that. Trying to, making sure that he had the right bags. When he was first connecting the cassettes and setting up the machine and things like that, for the most part, I did a lot of that because of his eyesight and trying to make sure that, he could see everything correctly. Other than that, I didn't have to be involved too much. It was mainly just when it came to having to look at things where you had to deal with certain measurements and having to make sure that you don't touch the tips of the bags when you're doing injections, things that would be hard for him to see on his own. So those are the things that I had to deal with. Now, for the most part, he does pretty much everything on his own now. Now that his eyesight is cleared up and things like that, I don't have to deal with too much of anything other than, being at home when his dialysis supplies is delivered. That's about it.
What benefits to your husband's health and your family dynamics have you noticed since he started peritoneal dialysis?
We used to have to take and schedule everything around him going to the clinic and then also having to put off things because he was sick quite often when he was going to the clinic. So when he got home, he didn't have any energy. But since he's been on peritoneal, he has more control of when he hooks up, when he unhooks, and where he does his dialysis, whether it's on the machine or whether it's manual. We don't have such a tight schedule to have to deal with. We're going, they have a kid performance. Well, he can't go because he's at dialysis. He's now able to go because he does it at night, and it's not during any time when somebody needed him to be someplace else. And so that's how it's made it easier for us because he has more control of his time and his schedule and the things that he's doing without us having us being restricted to the time frame of in-center.
Gary works full-time while on peritoneal dialysis. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that's like for him and for you as a caregiver?
Gary's a workaholic, so also peritoneal did great with that for him. He didn't work for like about 5 years. He just started back to work last year. He normally works from 7 in the morning to 5 in the evening. If he has his way, he's there 6 days a week versus just the 5. he's able to, he has his time set to where he is up and out of the house by a certain time. And if for some reason he has to work late, he just calls and says, can you, in order to make sure that everything is set up and ready to go and his solutions are warm, he may call and say, can you set the machine up for me, things like that. But it left him but with him working and everything, it's not interfering with him. He has the energy to work because it's not as strenuous on his body.
You and your husband, Gary, like to travel. What is it like traveling on a home dialysis treatment?
Traveling on the home dialysis treatment is not bad because he's not having to call to schedule at somebody else's clinic to try and make sure he has a chair Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The only thing that he has to schedule for the most part is when you call, you got to call in like 40 days ahead of time to have some solutions sent ahead to wherever your destination is. And then you just load up your machine and take it with you. They give you a suitcase and everything to put the machine in. You take it with you. We've taken a cruise, and with the cruise, he ended up doing manuals, which were very easy. The Fresenius or the clinics that you deal with, most of them have contracts with the different cruise lines when they have a contact person that'll help coordinate the time that you'll be out at water and getting the solutions to the correct cruise. And on top of that, my husband and I, we drove just 2 years ago. We literally drove from Alaska all the way to Florida, and that was a 7-day in our truck, drive. And part of the time, when we were just driving, he would stop and he would just do an exchange within the car because it was just us. We just cut everything off so that he could hook up. We took his machine and some cycler bags with us so that, the 2 or 3 times that we stopped to get a hotel room, he was able to do a complete cycle exchange at the hotel. But he travels quite often, and he has no problems. It's real easy to get with everyone to make sure that the solutions and everything are where they need to be. And for the most part, they'll even send your cartridges along with solutions and any other extra supplies you need onto where you're going. So you're not having to travel with a whole lot of stuff.
Yalonda, it has been a pleasure to speak with you today. We are grateful for your time and dedication to improving the quality and experience of care for those touched by ESRD. Thank you. We thank you for listening to this podcast. To listen to the rest of our podcast series on home dialysis or for additional information on home dialysis options, visit the End Stage Renal Disease National Coordinating Center website at www.esrdncc.org or talk to your healthcare provider.